Welcome to Thursday nights. We have myself and Ben. We have the small crew. Jimmy is out traveling around the world at this point on vacation, so we wish him safe travels. But tonight you have the OGs, the originals, Josh from Star Wars and High, and Ben from Star Wars Timeline. Ben, how's it going, my man?
Good to see you, Josh. We're missing Jimmy. We always enjoy him here, so we exchange ideas threefold, right? We toss ideas three ways, and it's always interesting how all three of us, we have like differences of opinion on pretty much everything. Sometimes we align, sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
This is the fun part of it, guys. We are in the middle of Kenobi show, right? We're about to wrap up next week.
Yep.
But there's a lot of excitement in the community, so we're here to talk about the show, the episode, just once again, bring all of the sides of the fandom, all of the voices, and kind of like represent those from every angle.
Yeah, and I will say, we'll wait a couple minutes before we get into the meat of the episode, and I will mention it here, and I'll mention it probably 3 or 4 more times. We are going to have spoiler talk tonight. It's in the title. So if you've not seen the episode yet, don't stick around too long because we are going to be spoiling the whole episode. But before we do that, I want to call it a couple things. First of all, there's been exciting Star Wars books that have come out recently. We've had Brotherhood, which came out a couple weeks back now. Ben, you finished it. Quick thumbs up, thumbs down. How did you feel about the novel?
Phenomenal, especially when you come into a Star Wars book with not a lot of expectation. I've actually come to expect great things from the canon books because they have been overwhelmingly positive. And I said, wow, we're back to that clone era literature, which I really like from the Legends aspect, and even the modern day books like the Master and Apprentice, the Dark Disciple. All of those books, the Leia, Princess of Alderaan, have been great. So I went in without expecting much and was literally blown away. It's probably one of the best Star Wars books I've ever read. Honestly, like easily.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really exciting. I have not finished it yet. I've started it. I have been super swamped with just things. So much going on this month. So I am behind. And I have this problem, Ben. And you talked about it a little bit online on Twitter a couple days ago, where I have I'm reading multiple books at one time. It's always a juggling act where that'll happen, where I'll be deep in. So I'm deep in the Fifth Wheel of Time book. It's like 40 hours. So, it takes a long time to dive into. And then Brotherhood will come out. And I'm like, man, I really want to read that too. So I'll take a pause from, Wheel of Time, go listen to Brotherhood for a little bit, and then go back. And it's a hard act to balance. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's
especially with an epic fantasy when you're dealing with so many names or title families. You guys, for those of you who watched Game of Thrones, get an idea. And then when you pause with a fantasy book for a couple of weeks, you finish your Star Wars reading and you back to it, like, oh man, I think I got to start over because you lose track of the story.
Especially, you're absolutely correct. Locations, factions, especially in Wheel of Time, which is extremely involved. I will tell you guys a quick side note. If you haven't read the series, you watched the show and you were iffy on the show, I would tell you, just personally, I think the books are far superior, and they always are, right? We know books have more time. The shows have to streamline quite a lot. In their defense, Wheel of Time is the longest book series by word count. It's insane. I mean, it's obscene. It's 10 books.
14 books, right?
I think it is 14. There's maybe 13 in the core, and then one prequel, which is New Spring. Right. It's something like that. It's insane, and I'm just gonna. It's probably lasting the next 5-6 years. Which I like. I like when a series takes that long because I feel like I really grow with the characters. Like I really live in that world with them. That's one thing I'm really excited for. So anyway, I'm balancing that with Brotherhood. And of course, because we just keep getting more stuff, later this month we have Shadow of the Sith, which I know, for some folks might not be as exciting because it's sequel era. For me, I am, just because I kind of tend to like to visit new times in Star Wars that we don't know a ton about. And I expect, this is just my opinion, that it will be more in line with some old legend style book where you have Luke and Lando out on kind of adventure together. So I'm excited to read that, and that comes out on June 28th. So that's 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks
almost
from now.
There, yeah.
We're almost there. So it's been wild on that front. And then we have Kenobi, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, but only a couple months from now. Andor comes out. Bad Batch comes out as well. And
Visions is this year, right?
Well, no. So
that's okay.
That's next year. But what we have this year is Tales of the Jedi, that animated, which, Ben, I have to send you the leaked teaser because it's so good. I think even though there might be some, disappointment about the name, and the actual trailer is so good. It looks, I know you're going to love it, Ben, because you love Star Wars animation, and it continues to always meet your expectations. So
they should rename it to Tales of the Rickroll Jedi.
yeah, the ultimate feels bad. So excited for the title, but I have a feeling, someone in my in my chat made a really good point. Bad Batch is September, that's right. That they expect Tales of the Jedi will become like kind of a reoccurring thing, where it's like this might be the first one might explore the Clone War era, but the next one might explore the another great era or something like that.
Wow.
And I was like, that would be a good idea. So you could do something like the High Republic, or you could go towards, the original. So I'm like, that's a really fun idea. So I hope.
And my understanding is those are micro episodes, like 5-10 minutes, right?
I think a little bit longer. I think some are like 12, kind of like Visions. I think some are like 12 to 15 as well. So it should be exciting.
Not bad.
So my point being, there's a lot right now when you talk about things to consume and watch. A lot more on the way, because you know what else comes out in the fall, Ben? The whole next wave of the High Republic comes out as well. So I mean, it is getting a little bit bloated year. It's gonna be a very full year, which is exciting to say the least. Now, the big topic is Kenobi. I want to say a couple things before we get into episode 5. I'm going to start with episode 4, because episode 4 we didn't have a stream for. We did have reviews, so by now you know our feelings. It feels like so long ago I watched episode 4, but maybe I would give you guys, my summarized thoughts for those who didn't know. One thing that I liked the episode, one thing that stuck out for me in episode 4 in particular compared to the others, I felt for me the pacing was a little, it was quick. The episode just really flew by for me. And I think you feel that when you have a week for the next episode. So as much as I'm actually not a big fan of binging shows, I kind of like to breathe a little bit, like let the emotional impact hit me, spend some time away.
Right.
So I don't need to binge shows, but I think that does impact it, where you have an episode, it's like 27 minutes, and then it's like you wait a week. So it feels like, wow, that was really quick. I waited a week, got 27 minutes, and waited again. So that's just a personal feeling, a personal kind of experience. I felt like the episode had some strong points as well. But overall, to me, if I was to, and I think I did this in my review, I think up to that point, so take us a week in our time machine, I think episode 1 was still the best episode at that point. I thought episode 3 was next in line, and I thought episode 2 and 4 were kind of similar to me. Shorter, action-y, focused ones, which I didn't find quite as entertaining as I did episode 1 and 3. So that was my feelings on 4. It was quick. We didn't have a lot of time. But, 6 episodes. One thing before I pass it to you, Ben, sorry, not to take us too off topic here.
Sure.
One thing I've kind of wondered, because Stranger Things has been out, and every episode's like an hour and 15 minutes. They release it all at once, except for the last 2 episodes. And I feel like it's such a different viewing experience. And let me give you this is just personal thought here, food for thought. I'm watching the first episode of Stranger Things, and there was one segment in particular that I just didn't work for me. It just didn't land. I thought it was really cheesy and silly. And because the episode was so long, and then I immediately watched episode 2, it's like you forget almost. It's almost like the little bumps aren't as noticeable, because there's so much content. There's 2 hours and 20 minutes. 80% of it's fantastic. So the weak 20% really doesn't rise. When if you have a short episode, again, it's personal opinion, if you have a short 30-minute episode and you have to wait a week, I think any minor hiccup or major hiccup is magnified, because you have a week to talk about it, a week to stare at it, And so I've been thinking a lot about this week, and I'm not going to spoil anything about Stranger Things, but there's a scene in the opening episode where you have 2 characters talking in a forest setting, and they're supposed to be kind of charismatic. And for me, it just totally whiffed. I don't know. The editing was kind of choppy, and it was like the characters kind of turned personalities on a dime. And I remember thinking like, wow, I'm surprised I haven't seen more people like memeing about that on the internet. And then I was like, well, of course not, because the next 40 minutes is like phenomenal. And the next episode's fantastic too. So those little bumps just don't stick out. So anyway, that's kind of my opinion on something I'm noticing as I'm watching Stranger Things on one hand and watching Kenobi on the other, is when you only have 6 episodes and they're shorter and you have to wait a week in between each. If there is a hiccup, if there is a dispute, or if it's, if it doesn't work for you, it's all that you focus on for a week. So anyway, my thoughts on episode 4, maybe why it felt short to me was because I waited a week, 27 minutes, and I waited another week. We're spoiled by streaming, so what can I say?
Right.
Ben, I said a lot there, but I didn't say too much. Episode 4 was just fine for me. I don't think it worked as well for you. What did you think about episode 4 before we dive into the most recent episode of the show?
Yeah, I couldn't find the same issues that you did in terms of pacing. As far as timing goes, I thought that everything that the director, Deborah Chow, needed to do was on screen. Like, it didn't feel short or long. It felt just the right time in terms of pacing. I didn't feel rushed. I didn't feel that it was too much, like it was bloated. It's just what was in the episode didn't work for me, the content itself. But it's a very interesting observation that you make. I would compare what you just made, the comparison between the Stranger Things, which I'm also watching. I have just one more episode to go. It's a longer format episode versus the Kenobi. And it's almost a comparison to novels versus short stories.
Yeah.
When you have a novel, like I just finished a fantasy novel called Sword Dancer. Fantastic book. But there's one major part towards the end which didn't work for me. But it seems like when you're reading a novel, let's say a Star Wars novel even, right? You could have a couple of scenes, even an entire chapter that just doesn't seem to jive with you. It may not be poorly written, just the ideas don't work for you, right?
Sure.
It's a lot more forgivable because the rest of the book is so good. There's a lot more room for error.
Agree.
And the reason that I started getting into short form writing and just appreciating it from a whole different perspective is that it is so economical with words and ideas. There's literally no room for mistakes. And this is why the masters are distinguished. And you have like Edgar Allan Poe, of course, and Robert E. Howard, the masters of the short form, right? When you read their short stories, Robert E. Howard, right, the author behind the original Conan the Barbarian character, he literally transplants you into his world within a paragraph.
Yeah,
that's
and
how much of a master he is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great observation. And one comment here to our friend John here. Yes, it's Andor. You see in chat, Andor is the next show we're getting in the Star Wars universe. It takes place a little bit before the Rogue One movie, if you're not familiar. So it is one trailer out so far. I think it looks fantastic from that first trailer. Yeah. And I'm very excited for it, but it is going to be end of the summer, August 31st. So Andor is coming. But great. And you've made that point before, Ben, when we talk about sometimes those Visions episodes, for example, that in that short content format, it has to be tight, has to be really, really tight. Yeah. Or it's more noticeable because you hit the nail on the head, because I'm reading Wheel of Time, which this book in the series is over 40 hours long. And yeah, there's some chapters or sections that you're like, but it's an epic. It's 40 hours I just spent in that world. If you guys, I gotta say this too, before we get to episode 5, I'm going to give it like 5 more minutes, 5 more seconds. Honestly, I can't wait much longer. But if you think about a book that's 40 hours long, an audio book, an average season of television is about 10 hours long, 10 episodes, 1 hour each. So one novel in a series could be about 4 times that, like 4 seasons of a TV show in one book. And you think about that book being that series being 10 or 12 books long, you understand pretty quickly how shows have to really cut out a lot of content to fit it. It's just impossible. It takes you 40 hours of your time reading to get the same experience. And so that's why so many times, we'll say books are better. It's because they have so much more time with you, the audience, so many more ways to give you the message and the ideas. And so anyway, just an observation I make as I read these epic fantasy novels and watch the more popular streaming shows these days. What can you do in 40 hours is pretty incredible as far as story is concerned.
Yeah.
Okay, episode 5, real quick. Do you think we'll get a cameo with Luke Skywalker? Well, in Andor, no. If we're talking about Andor, because that comes before Luke is really old. And in this show, Kenobi, I do expect to see young Luke in this next episode. I think that was hinted to.
We sort of end with him, right? The last shot in episode 5 was on Luke. So I guess we're going to carry the story over to him.
Absolutely. 40 hours. The last Thrawn book was like 28. I think that's right. The Thrawn books have been long. I tend to be a sucker for the longer books because I feel like I grow with the characters. I feel like I spend time with them. And so when they
I'm with you there. Absolutely.
In fantasy, a lot of a very common experience in fantasy novels is the long traveling, the long trek. And when you read those long stories, you kind of understand what the characters have been through because you feel that passing of time in your own life. And so for me, it enhances the experience. Where you guys heard me on Twitter this week raving about A Way of Kings. Like, I love that fantasy series. It's called the Stormlight Archive. We're 4 books in. Each is about 40 hours, written by Brandon Sanderson. I think it's just fantastic. I think it's phenomenal. And each book has taken me like 6 months to a year. And so I feel so engrossed into that world. It's been about 4 years of my life I've been in that world. And it feels like so much more is at stake. And I love those characters so much more because I've spent 4 years of my life with them, every week reading their story. And so anyway, I think it's a great way to connect to characters. And audiobooks have really helped with that. Okay. Audible credits to spend. If you have time, A Way of Kings. I have a little 2.5 minute primer video that will help you understand like the groundwork before you read it. Super helpful. But like any fantasy, it takes probably 5 hours to fully understand. But once you're in, you totally get it. Follows 3 main characters in the first book. I love it. Anyway, okay. Enough of that. Let's get into Kenobi episode 5. Guys, today I put jokingly on the tweet, we're going to be, this is going to be Josh versus Ben because we had vastly different experiences with this episode. And one of the reasons we do this show, typically with our third host, Jimmy, is we kind of like to demonstrate a variety of opinions. And, it's so easy in online kind of debate culture for any of us, honestly, to get trapped in kind of the very hostile kind of confrontations, the zingers, the burns, and, we can all get caught up in it. But we really want to show that we can coexist as Star Wars fans. And how I would kind of put it, if you're new to the stream, if you're new to the channel, I consider myself a big prequel fan, but honestly, have really enjoyed so much of animated Star Wars beyond what we've just seen with Clone Wars and Bad Batch. Also really adored Visions. Looking forward to the next couple of projects. I've enjoyed Mandalorian. I've enjoyed Book of Boba Fett, and I've enjoyed Kenobi. Enjoyed moments of the sequel trilogy. Some work better for me than others. And I consider myself more of like a middle of the line kind of fan. Some things I don't love. Some things I think are great. But I'm kind of open to any really, idea there. Ben, I consider more of a fan of the books and the animated projects, and has a lot of love for the original trilogy as well, which got him started on Star Wars. And I think, Ben, it would be fair to say, I've heard you say so basically yourself, that live action Star Wars since the original trilogy hasn't maybe landed for you the same way the books have outside of The Last Jedi. But The Last Jedi, I think, really clicked for you as far as books are concerned, movies are concerned, excuse me. So we're very different in kind of our perspectives and our interests. And so Kenobi is the discussion today. And for those who did not see my review, my reaction was right after I finished, about 3 minutes after. And I was pretty pumped up. I was definitely revved up for the review. And I thought it absolutely was a blast. I had a really, really fun time watching the episode. And I said it last night, and I kind of will repeat it again because I still think it holds true, that there were moments throughout the episode I thought could have been tightened up or polished up or done a little better. But I thought it absolutely nailed the fun factor. It nailed, there were times that I audibly was like, oh yeah, watching with my wife, talking with my friends. That is one of the reasons I really enjoy Star Wars. It's fun for me. And those kind of episodes I thought are really, really fun. And so for me, it nailed the objective. And I would maybe compare it to Spider-Man No Way Home. And what I mean by that is that if you really watch No Way Home, I could really be critical of how silly the plot is. Guys, the whole idea that the Sorcerer Supreme would mess up a spell in such a silly way, and that Peter Parker, who is a young boy genius, couldn't think of a better wish. Something like, hey, I wish people would forget Mysterio said I was Spider-Man, instead of saying, hey, I think everyone should forget the Spider-Man. Oh, but me. Breaks the multiverse, pulls in actors I grew up with, and old villains I grew up with, it's super silly and super, super ridiculous. However, so many moments in that movie nail the heart. They understand what that Spider-Man character is. They give him, I think, a really emotional, impactful ending where he makes a really powerful sacrifice in a really interesting way, not sacrificing his life, but kind of sacrificing his memory, his people, all of his loved ones' connection to him. And I think that was really, really great. And the loss of his aunt, I thought it was really effective at the end. And even though I could be critical that the actors don't act like they did in their movie, and the whole premise is ridiculous because Doctor Strange and Peter Parker are much smarter than that, I had such a fun time in the theater and such a smile on my face that I can easily forgive those discrepancies. And that's how I felt in last night's episode. I had a blast. I thought it was a ton of fun. And I have watched many of the funnest moments on replay throughout the day. So with my long-winded excitement out of the way, we'll pass over to Ben, who will be the voice of reason, the voice of wisdom here.
So you are all passion, I'm intellect.
That's it. That's how we split it up there. That's it. That's it. We're the perfect person together. So there you go.
Right. No, guys, look, in this podcast, you're not going to hear any vitriol. You're not going to hear any kind of like backstabbing remarks here. We're two friends talking about Star Wars. So big deal. You know, it works for somebody. It doesn't for someone else. I want to quickly preface and say that to get to the bottom of this and see what really makes the show work or not work is to separate between I like versus what I think. Because oftentimes, like you mentioned, Josh, when you're dealing with social media and you don't have the time to, you know, write a whole essay and explain to a person each and every time why you like something, oftentimes I find that in a discussion, if this is what you could possibly call a brief text message, which is not even a paragraph long, you know, it's cinema. It's good. It is well done. Cinema, whatever terminology and words are being used, it usually equates to I like it. And if I like it, I want other people to enjoy it and like it as well. I'm based on emotion there, right? And if people's feelings misalign in something, that's why I feel a lot of impatient remarks begin. It's like, well, you just don't understand, you know, you're not seeing clearly, go back, watch the episode and realize that yada, yada, yada. You guys get the idea. When I watch it, and I'm sure, Josh, you do it as well, because we seem to be, you and I, a little bit more than just Star Wars buffs. We're like heavy into fantasy and sci-fi literature. We'll watch other shows.
Sure.
We'll like break them out. We are basically movie nerds, right? Not to say that we know anything more than you guys do, whoever is watching, but we are movie nerds. We enjoy splicing these things and understand the DNA, understand to the best of our capacity how these things work. So I think it's very important to distinguish and say, look, I like something. It's enjoyable to me. I had fun. Versus, hey, I don't think this works. I don't think this is constructed well, and I think this is problematic over here, and this is why I don't like it. So I think this will be a very good foundation for you and I to get to the bottom of this, analyze the details of it, because the show, like the older I get, the more I feel more settled in my own taste, and I'm no longer reactive spontaneously. I am a very emotional person. I react to everything intuitively first, but I'm knowing myself, you know, I know my personality type. I kind of like cool off and I brainstorm again and I revise my opinion. And I say, I kind of like arrive at something and I say, you know what, this is in the end what I feel about this show. And maybe in next years from that moment, I will still revise my opinion. It's totally fine to do that, guys. I don't feel that any thought or concept or belief is so rigid that you can't change from it and it, you know, evolve it.
You know, a couple thoughts, you know, you're right. I think that we, you know, it's interesting. What's so funny about this whole thing is we talk about this a lot is like, you know, Ben and I agree on a lot of things. Like this year, for example, we both loved the Batman. We both thought it was absolutely phenomenal. We both adore Dune. I think the Dune 2021 Dune is just absolutely phenomenal. I think it's absolutely a masterclass. I adore that movie. And so it's always humorous when you can disagree so much on something else. Like, man, we like, how are we so off here? I think a lot of it for me, and I said this in my episode last night, is, and I've told, Ben this offline as well, is so much of what I love about Star Wars is the community aspect, the event aspect to it, the shared enjoyment, the fact that we have people in here talking about it, hyped up, the fact that I have friends I'm watching it with. A lot of it is the spectacle. Sounds like such a negative connotation, but I'll say the spectacle, the event of it, the kind of shared excitement. I could think back to Force Awakens on Christmas-ish week, right?
It's a
like
holiday.
Right before the holiday. Exactly. Star Wars Day a couple weeks back, where it's like, oh, Kenobi's coming, and we got new trailers, and I mean, I'm so hyped up watching the Bad Batch trailer and seeing Andor, and so much of the fun I have with Star Wars is that kind of dynamic. That an episode like this, which goes to me full on, like, hey, look, some of the stuff might not. We're here to give you some fun. We know what you want to see. We're giving you what you want to see. You want to see Clone Wars flashbacks? We're going to give them to you, right? We brought back Hayden Christensen. I know so many fans were impatient about that. We knew that we were going to see them in some sort of flashback. We get that. And I think it was a fun dynamic. It was kind of the classic Obi-Wan Anakin, where Anakin is more talented, more gifted, but doesn't have his emotions in check, right? And Obi-Wan is giving him that kind of coaching moment, which is so familiar to the prequel era, right? It's so familiar to the Clone Wars. It feels right at home. And then you have, of course, Vader, a character that is maybe one of the most popular pop culture figures of all time. I would say of all time. He's up there across the world globally. There's not many more figures more popular than Vader. And so they give you an absolute, I think, Ben might disagree with me, but that's okay. I think it's an absolutely phenomenally fun and just cool scene of Vader being overpowered, being ridiculously strong, and it was cool. I had a great time. There's a couple of moments in particular that I was like, oh man, out loud in the middle of the episode, just because it was like, oh, that's so cool. I love that. And so they gave so many things that I wanted to see, that I have fun watching, and I can't help but have a good time. I can't help but be smiling and pumped up and like, golly, that was so cool. That was so fun. Like, yeah, there were some story moments to me that didn't exactly maybe land perfectly, but in the end, I just got this big old smile on my face, and
I think this is a lot more imperative and to any entertainment. It's the fun factor, because in the end, viewing something or reading something, it's still a one-on-one experience, more or less. How you experience Star Wars would be different from your wife or from your closest friend, right? It's a one-on-one interaction first and foremost. And nobody should tell you what Star Wars is, and nobody should tell you what fun is or what good is to you, right? It's a feeling. It's an intuitive thing. It just delights you in so many ways that you can't fully put into words and just explain away. So much is attached with family time, or with your child, or with happy memories that you associate, and no critic will ever take that away, right? But at the same time, I think when you and I, we first started talking, and we came up with the idea, hey, let's go live and start doing these streams, is that at the same time, especially in today's culture, I think it's very important to kind of step away from this very sanitized, very this kind of forced positivity. And it was like, hey, let's just celebrate everybody and stay together and stay with the program. This is a good show, right? This is good. This is good. No, sometimes it's okay to state your opinion, and for other people recognize what you're doing here. You're not trying to agitate the fandom. You're not trying to anger or poke the fans. You're just coming out and you say, look, I don't think my opinion is better than anyone else, but I don't think this works. I think this is bad. If I call Deborah Chow's work bad, I'm not insulting or attacking the director. She came on board. She performed the job, right? And I don't like it. I don't think it's a job well done. It is perfectly fine to say that. And I think it's problematic when fans think, well, then you just don't understand. We get into this emotional territory. So I think you and I, Josh, we've built enough of this trust in one another and rapport that we both know that we have plenty of experience to read the picture, to understand what we're looking at, and just have completely two polar opposite takes on it. My younger brother, who I took to see The Phantom Menace in 1999, had a vastly different experience watching The Phantom Menace from myself. And we're family. We're from the same culture. We're from the same household. So there you go. So I think this will be very, very important. With that being said, the moment that I saw the first episode, I immediately got my prequel trilogy alarm bells going off. And that is to say that I just felt very, very deflated and let down with those films when I was watching them in theaters, because they just didn't look or feel like good movies, first and foremost. The more I look into myself and my love for Star Wars, I realized that Star Wars was never the pinnacle of my existence. It was never the center of my enjoyment of like literature. My first book that I ever read was Treasure Island when I was a kid, right? One of the first fantasy epic adventure movies that I saw was the original Clash of the Titans, right? So, and Star Wars was there along for the ride. So when I look at Star Wars today, when I look at Kenobi, I'm not looking at lightsabers first. I'm not looking at cool worlds. I don't care for the celebration. I don't care for the Disney Channel, all these weekly updates. Like, none of it matters to me. When it comes to me and Star Wars, I'm an introvert. It's a one-on-one experience. After I digest it, after I look at it, and what it makes me feel, that's what Star Wars is to me. So, and I'm there not to get more Star Wars, throw myself into that world again. I want to see good storytelling. I want to see good cinematography, and I want to see strong directing. Like, for example, again, we're talking about Stranger Things. Why not bring it into the fold and make it a part of the discussion? I don't particularly watch horror flicks or monster flicks, right? Okay, Stranger Things. What is this? Let's check it out. Let's keep an open mind. That's how I approach Kenobi. I don't care what existed before in Star Wars Legends or canon, or my love or passion for the original trilogy, or how it needs to connect. Like, none of it matters to me. What matters is, here is a new director with a new creative voice. Think of it as a new DC writer coming on board and doing his own take on Batman and revitalizing that origin story, looking back at who Alfred means to him and what are all these villains. How can I put a new spin on it and make it an exciting character for the audience again? That's how I look at Kenobi. We have 6 episodes to run with. Deborah Chow, you got to the stage. Impress me. Show me what you got there. And I tried to stay positive. I tried to stay on board and say, well, yeah, let's just give it a shot. Give it a shot. The Leia actress, she's wonderful, and she's wonderful. She's doing the best that she can. Let's just get to it and get to the heart and soul of the series. And that's when we will begin to kind of start getting intellectual and see, like, well, okay, let me start just putting it on shelves here and arranging everything and see how this beast, how this animal works. And it doesn't. It's with this episode, I don't care how it ends anymore, because the idea is sort of cooked in my mind. It's already done. That it's bizarrely poorly done. It's almost laughable. It's like, I know that Star Wars is capable of so much more, but I'm not being emotional. Like, I don't bang on the table and be demanding. It's like, well, how dare you, Deborah Chow, to step on my child? George Lucas, he ruined my life with Pickles. I'm not doing that. I'm just practically looking at things like, this doesn't work. This is not well made. If someone, and then this is returning to what I said earlier. If somebody says, look, Ben, I like it, I enjoyed it, exactly, Josh, what you said 5 minutes ago, I'm fine with it. That's totally understandable. It's me reaching out to another person and understanding what they're experiencing. But when people get on Twitter, this is high cinema, this is the best show, I've seen this year. I'm like, dude, settle down a little bit. Okay, let's jump off that horse for a little bit and see what's in front of us. And there's just so much sloppy writing and free handouts and plot armor and just conveniences all along the way that it's so disruptive, it's almost impossible for me to watch. So I did not like this episode, and I honestly don't care how it ends. I'll be there for the end of it to give it just my full take and say, this is what this is. Maybe I'll rewatch it one more time, the entire thing. But I don't think the chances are I'll improve it vastly, because I learned to live with prequels and appreciate them for what they are. But as far as, are they better films 20 years after? No, they're not, because it's been done. It's been filmed. What's on the screen is what you get.
Yeah. So, let me respond to some of those points. First of all, I love the prequel. So my experience in the theater was obviously vastly different. And I think, what I hear you saying a lot of, Ben, in a roundabout way, and you can, disagree with me, but my kind of interpretation of it is, you have an opinion that, it's almost like you'd like to be recognized as being having a legitimate opinion, maybe not lumped into just this crazy negative, I yell at the clouds kind of fan. But I watch this, I see problems with it, and
Right.
It's okay. You guys don't have to treat me like a pariah. Almost is almost what it kind of feels like, right? And so when you see people on Twitter saying it's like high cinema, and you're like, no, it's not. The flip side of that is, they're having fun. They're online in their space. They're expressing their excitement. So, I can defend their position there as well. It's very much just
and I understand it.
Yeah,
I understand where they're coming
and
from.
So
but it's very emotion based. It's like, hey, I love this. How come you don't love it as well?
Well, your European cynicism is coming out and overshadowing the love of the West here, where we have a lot more fun here, Ben. And so I could definitely empathize with you. And as I've told you before, we, as we kind of described in our own little segments there, have vastly different views of Star Wars, really what Star Wars should be. And I think part of it is how we grew up with Star Wars. You grew up with it as this indie sci-fi film that broke the mold. And I view it as the prequels, which was like, this is high octane, fun, cheesy sci-fi. And fun, sci-fi fantasy. And I really want to emphasize, to me, and this might be a hot take, I don't think so. Star Wars has always been more fantasy to me than sci-fi. I think Dune is far more sci-fi than fantasy, even though it has a lot of fantasy elements. That's kind of how I look at the flip. And what do you mean by that? Well, sci-fi to me has always been a lot more, I'm totally blanking on a smart word, a lot more cerebral. Thank you. That's what I was thinking. It's far more cerebral, far more playing with themes and ideas. And fantasy is a lot more of an adventure, the fall of a hero, those same kind of archetypes. And so that's what Star Wars has always been to me. And that's what I go to it for. I kind of look at the original, I think it's held up in, and this is me, the youngin'. I think the original trilogy gets held in really high regards because of what it was. It was one of the first films like that, right? It was huge. It was like modern day Avatar. Like when Avatar came to theater, it was like, what the, they moved filmmaking forward. They moved excitement forward. And so all of that being said, I go into Star Wars with vastly different expectations. I go to Star Wars to have fun, see characters I like doing cool things. Does that make me maybe easy to please? Maybe it does. And I guess that's okay. I guess that's okay in its own right as well.
100%. Yeah.
So to think about the episode, there is actually not, so a lot happens in the episode, but it actually goes really quick. I mean, this episode had, I think, a very, again, fast pace. It was about 47 minutes long, 45 minutes long. Regardless, we went along right away. It takes place where last episode left off, where Reva has left a tracker she's taken over the Lolo droid and made it, hacked it in some way and made it be her little spy in the sky. So we open the episode with a flashback. We start our prequel era's flashback where we see the back of Anakin's head in front of Coruscant. We see the Padawan braid, which I think is really fun for me, and we see, I don't know, maybe it's just me, the scene felt right out of the prequels. If you would have told me that was in one of the movies or cut from one of the movies, I absolutely think it was right in line with the themes of those movies, the acting of those movies. They felt just like the characters they were. Now, from a look perspective, I thought there was some de-aging. The internet seems to think that there was no de-aging. So I don't think there was as much de-aging as there was for some of these other roles where they have a really old actor age down. I think they just did mild de-aging, but I liked it. I liked seeing Hayden. The characters felt dead in line with who they were in the prequels. They even, from the facial expressions to the way they talked, it felt just right there. And so we start with a sparring session with Obi-Wan and Anakin, which kind of set the tempo for the episode, right? I know a lot of people right off the bat were like, oh my gosh, here we go. Like, this is what I wanted to see. This is what I was hoping for. And so throughout the episode, that sets the stage for they do that kind of mirror image parallel where you look at events of the past between these two characters and you flash forward to the future and see how the lessons and the characteristics of those two kind of go throughout time. And you see these same habits repeated in these same, in Vader's case, the same mistakes caused or the same mistakes made. And so let's focus on the Clone Wars flashbacks, or prequel era flashbacks. They weren't really during the Clone Wars. I mean,
Right.
he had the Padawan braid, so we assume. But regardless, what do you think about the flashbacks? I'm not sure they worked for you or not, Ben. Let me know what you think.
A very quick note first on de-aging technology, so we get it out of this way. I don't mind that. Like, Anakin obviously doesn't look quite the same that we see him in Clone Wars. Obviously,
Sure.
Hayden Christensen, he's my age. He's 41. I don't mind it. I'd rather have an actor who looks a little bit off, but it's still him, still
Agreed.
performing all the choreography and acting and having the same charisma, rather than deep fake Luke from The Mandalorian too. It just was off-putting. The scene built up to such a emotional crescendo, just for me completely undermined it because the effect wasn't fully done. So the moment that this scene starts, what we're having here is like I automatically pick up on the visual language, like, okay, we're doing parallel action here. Two separate scenes happening concurrently because she is trying to connect the theme here, right? Of who is trying to outsmart who is the master and who is the apprentice. So on the paper, it's an interesting take, but you need a filmmaking prowess to bring it to fruition and through the episode to the conclusion, so it grips you. I'm watching this and I want to experience what I experienced during viewing Stranger Things, where every scene, every moment, every dialogue line, everything that's happening on this screen is leading me somewhere. I feel like I'm sitting next to those kids and experiencing the story alongside with them. Here, first, the cutting is very off-putting because I have to come into this show not as a Star Wars nerd who lived with Star Wars for nearly 40 years, and I know Kenobi and Anakin from prequels inside out as characters. I know them from the books, I know them from live action movies, from the Clone Wars animated show. What you have to establish here is an emotional beat as a director. You can't spend 25 seconds and a cut off to Vader. Vader does his own little shtick with Reva. He gives her that badge. We'll get to it a little bit later if that's what you want to focus on. And then we cut back to the choreography in the scene. And automatically, I feel that the language is disruptive. It's not well edited. I don't feel anything. I'm watching it, and I'm not there like, oh my God. It's not enough for me to look at Anakin Skywalker and go berserk. What I'm looking for is like, I'm guys, not to sound jaded or too critical, like I'm an analyst when I watch my episodes. I don't do that. It's just I automatically pick up on stuff because I watch a lot of stuff, and I'm seeing this, and where I know that I should be feeling excitement, I'm like, okay, I knew this is coming because they hired Hayden Christensen. One sooner or later, it's an obligatory point. Like you foreshadow. It's almost like your sixth sense or your Jedi power that this particular kind of moment is coming in the show. And when it comes, it's fine. It's, the actors are doing their jobs. Once again, it's so reminiscent of prequel content. They're doing their thing. But the director does not have the proper tools to make it meaningful in any kind of way for me. I didn't care for it. I thought the choreography itself wasn't bad, but it didn't build that excitement because there is no stake in it because we know it's a practice duel.
I guess I read it different. I think I thought the music throughout this episode was better. I thought it was stronger than a lot of the episodes in before. I felt like it kind of was more sweeping in thematic, where it made me feel a lot more movement than I have in the past. I think for myself, what I get from that scene, you talk about maybe a lack of tension, knowing what it was, right? It maybe because it's a practice duel, there isn't maybe those stakes. I look at it more of a what could have been or what was. It's more of a demonstration to me of a lost brotherhood, right? This pair together was always on screen. I find to be so endearing. They're really quite charming together, right? And they keep that same kind of charisma they had all those years ago in the prequel trilogy, and they have quite a unique. It's quite fascinating to me how well they work off each other. They really do. They work together really well, and so for me, I found it to be, I guess, not as disruptive as you. I found it to be kind of a very fun little dance we had almost going between the old and what's new and what we've seen before. So I found it to be enjoyable, and again, I think it felt super prequel era. It just
Can I ask
felt,
you a question?
yeah.
Do you suspect that a lot of that momentum that you felt in that scene, does it come from your prior experience and understanding of these characters, or what this episode specifically set out to do and fulfilled?
Well, I mean, I guess it's a hard question to answer. I mean, I don't know what kind of bias is at play, but I assume it's definitely impacted by my history with the characters. But it's the next episode of those characters' life in a lot of ways. So I feel like I have to be moved by their prior history, my prior experience with them, because the director has to assume I have that understanding when I'm watching the show. You know what I mean? Like they know that I have that connection. They know I have that feeling, and that's why they put what they put in the episode, I guess, is my kind of view on it.
So see, I had a feeling that this is one of the biggest problems I have with Disney era live action Star Wars, is that a lot of it feels like people sitting down and saying, you know, what appeals to fans? What fans love about Star Wars? What are some of the ideas that we could cobble together and put together, hopefully in a powerful, striking way that people look at it and say, wow, we gave you all the things that you guys have been asking for. You know, the Vader lifting starships, check. Anakin and Kenobi, check. And when you pile all of these things together, it builds excitement, right? I feel it is so, again, it goes against the spirit of Star Wars. The spirit of innovation, of what George Lucas was doing as a director, is saying, okay, well, this is where Hollywood is today. You know, when he broke into the scene, you know, all of these Coca-Cola directors and all of these like industrial directors bought off all the movie studios and didn't have a clue about what makes a good artistic film. And he said, this is where all of these guys are going to. I'm going to subvert expectation. I'm going to swim against the current. And it's not about a director's vision or a storyteller's, a writer's vision. It's not about what is out there, what people hunger for. It's what kind of story I think is strong and I want to tell. And for me, it's always disruptive. It's always annoying when I watch something and it feels like it's just a PowerPoint presentation to me of things that I think I might like. I don't like that. It lacks any kind of energy, any kind of spontaneity. It feels contrived and it feels like a product and not like something that has energy to it.
So I can respect that point and understand maybe your perspective there. I guess maybe my counter thought would be twofold. Number one, there's an argument to be made, whether we like it or not, or whether you like it or not, or whether it sounds good or not, that sometimes something has to be, sometimes crowd pleasing works, right? Sometimes being the spectacle momentum, the Marvel event film is crowd pleasing, even if it is the most formulaic check thing we can see. There is an appeal to it, and whether good or not, it really does tend to work with most popular audiences. A lot of folks like the safe and happy as opposed to the subverting expectations that we saw in The Last Jedi, for example. And so I can really understand why Disney sometimes goes for that. I guess my other thought would be is I felt, though, that Kenobi as a show actually resisted the urge to do a lot of things fans wanted. Yes, in this episode, you are correct. They gave us some things we wanted. They gave us the Kenobi, Anakin flashbacks. They gave us Vader just being obscenely powerful and awesome and loving it. For the first 5 episodes, I think they took it in a direction that fans would arguably didn't want to see. They took Leia over Luke. They spent a lot of time with Leia. They introduced a whole new Grand Inquisitor that people were not happy about. A lot of people were complaining until this episode that why did you bring Hayden back? So on one hand, I agree. There are definite moments in all of live action Star Wars as of late that can feel, or feels to you at least, very fan servicey. Okay, you want to see Luke appear, we're going to give you that. You want to see this. But I would also say, in the creative team's defense, they could have made a much safer show than this. I really feel like that. There was a lot of safer shows. I mean, golly, they could have done a Kenobi. They could have done a Clone Wars flashback every 5 minutes, had Vader and Kenobi fight 6 times in a row, and people would have been like, you know. So I could argue that they could have gone. You know, I still see people who aren't pleased with this is false. I've seen some people always false advertising because they get a whole Obi-Wan versus Anakin show. We didn't get that, which I think is silly because you had the Clone Wars and you had.
Yeah, it was all based on assumptions.
Yeah, exactly. But regardless of that, I think they could have made a more formulaic show. But just my opinion. I think the weakest points of the episode. So I love the Clone Wars flashbacks. I will go ahead and jump the gun of the midsection, because honestly, there's not a ton to talk about here of super impactful. I felt like this section was probably the weakest, where it felt like the characters were under urgency, but I didn't actually feel that urgency come across. It was like, okay, we got an hour. Okay, well, they're here. It's like, okay, well, that just went by in the blink of an eye. And so I felt like the episode could have used more time to breathe. Or like only 15 minutes where our rebellion folks are trying to solve this problem. It felt like the problem was there. We found Kenobi provided a solution, and it just was like, okay, they're here now. Let's fight. And so I didn't exactly love how quick that section felt. I called that out last night as my least favorite section. That's where the show really, I felt like, needed some more time. Could have spent a little more time letting us breathe a little bit. But I don't exactly know what they're I don't exactly know who or what is driving episode length, because I feel like with all these episodes, outside of episode 1, another 10 to 15 minutes would go a long way. So just my opinion there. Sometimes let the audience kind of absorb the emotional impact. But I want to highlight a couple moments in the episode as I'm recalling it and get some thoughts from you, Ben. There was one scene that sticks out to me that I want to talk about a little bit was the death of this character. I'm totally forgetting. They introduced this new Imperial turn. Thank you. Tala and Ned B. Is that the droid's name? And they both die in battle in a scene that I actually liked for a couple reasons. Number one, I thought the music was actually pretty good in that scene. I thought the music in this whole episode was better. I've called that earlier. But I actually was kind of pleasantly surprised that they introduced this new character, and there's consequences in this world, and she dies along with this really cute droid they introduced. It's really kind of cute, fun droid for the kids. We're not going to... The odds are against you, and as many times as stormtroopers can miss people throughout Star Wars history, look, you're fishing a barrel here. Some folks got to go. And they take out a newly introduced character and a really cute droid. And I was like, yes, thank you. I like when new characters and characters that have potential and characters we like, they can't get out of some unwinnable situations. Yes, every hero through every action movie in time has the plot armor. But sometimes I think it's good to show they can die. They're not immortal. And so I like to see that those two kind of go down. I thought it was a fun moment. I say fun loosely. It was a sad moment, but I thought it worked well. Right. It worked well for me. Did you feel anything for the loss of our new friends, Ned B? And
well, I want to kind of circle back, if you don't mind, a little bit to that mid-section that you mentioned, where the woes of Kenobi continue for me. Is, when people say, well, Ben, sometimes you're too critical. You're just nitpicking details. When you study filmmaking and you study storytelling or writing, all of story consists of small details. That's what the story is. It's a mastery of combining small details and nuance, which aligns together into one sequence that you look on screen, literally, the frames of the film. That's what makes it work or not work. And everywhere I look throughout this episode, I see problems. So we're here with Reva and Moses Ingram. Look, we loved her. I made the video. I will stand behind this actress day and night, man. If she's in more in Star Wars and season 2 of Kenobi comes out, I hope she comes back. I have no beef, nothing against this actress. Aside from Kenobi, I can't honestly call anyone in the show a character because there's nothing going on. What they do is you have actors on screen relaying the information so you understand the plot so it moves forward. That is what is happening. Example. On board of Vader's ship, like, we got Kenobi. We're going to that refugee bunker. He anoints Reva as a new Grand Inquisitor. And it's a major plot convenience. It's not earned. We know it. She knows it. And yet Reva never questions it. What is his game? It makes her completely unbelievable as a character. She gets the badge and she stares at Vader and is he playing me? What's going on here? Again, I said it's on the verge of laughable. The level of writing here.
Well, 1 second. Let me maybe counter you here. Yeah. I could make a case that there's a lot of arrogance to Reva's character.
Right.
She, I think, is quite foolish. I think they portrayed her as that way in this episode. Right. I think she thought way too highly of herself. I think she was proven to that. And I think she thought, I've maneuvered myself so well. Of course, I've given him Kenobi on a silver plate. He's down there. Of course. I thought that kind of worked because I think the show has showed you that Reva at the end of the episode, they were like, she's a fool. she took
hear
this shot.
You loud and clear, Josh. I understand what you're trying to do here, and I get it. It's again, I'm not a filmmaker. I'm not a professional. I don't have the proper terminology to fully explain it, but it's very easy to.
I'll just give you my interpretation of the scene.
Right.
That's how I watch it.
It's very easy to plug the hole and say, well, remember that previously that happened over there, and this is why we can deduce that this is what she's thinking. And for me, this is something that the heavy lifting that fans are doing from their side. It's not what the show is showing you or doing. Because once again, as I mentioned before, for me personally, it feels like there is no visual storytelling. It's just an actor standing in front of a screen reacting, and you're supposed to deduce based on the information that you saw before, this is what she's probably going through. So let's move on with the picture. And now we get to the bunker. And up to this point, Kenobi is the unwilling hero. He's somebody who has been thrown into these events, right? He doesn't want to go and rescue Leia. He says, look, I gotta find somebody else. I'm broken. There's such a jarring transition from a broken Jedi to this, once again, this leader that I don't feel, like you said earlier, we don't spend enough time there, maybe if it was a 12-episode show, to see that transformation happen. He flips from one side to the other on cue, because once again, this is what the plot necessitates, because we got 6 episodes, you got to get on with the story, it needs to roll. Let's do it. And are we past the point where we can talk about the negotiation part, or it's something that you wanted to talk about?
We can go. I'm fine with that. No, that's right in line.
Let me just finish there. I know I'm stretching it a little bit. Okay. And then we get to this once again. The stormtroopers land. Reva is there. Again, attention to detail and showing us this is an empire at its absolute peak with Vader arriving. Right. So you sabotage the entrance to the
doors. Yeah,
the doors. Right. You have an Imperial Star Destroyer in orbit. I'm pretty sure your military command has some kind of sensors and say, let's cover all the bases here and guard all the exits because we got to get Kenobi, because that's what Vader has, because he will not think twice about snapping necks if Kenobi is not captured, right? And this is Deborah Chow. All of the stormtroopers neatly and accurately land in front of the landing pad like toy soldiers. They bring the cannon and they start banging on this door.
Sure.
Right? And then Reva comes in from one side, Kenobi comes from the other side, and they whisper through a 2-foot thick metal door. And I'm thinking to myself, again, guys, like at one point, all of the charade of diplomacy and being, the kind of like lenient with the show and being like kind of hopeful for it falls apart. And you're saying, who the heck directed this? Where did the money go? Again, attention to detail, narrative storytelling, taking me through an episode. I'm not even asking for the show to be fully great. At least one episode where I can sit and just relax, not fully even enjoy, just relax and say, okay, this is a motion picture. This is a show. It's telling me something. It honestly feels like a YouTube fan film that a person is trying to perfect his craft.
So I would say, on the steel door part, I mean, I guess to me, it's just silly Hollywood. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's so many times characters shouldn't be able to communicate in movies, but are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as we joke about, the Stormtrooper aim in the original trilogy is so terrible, it's become a reoccurring joke within the series itself, right? It's just fantasy, right? It's meant for a suspension of disbelief. So maybe I'm more forgiving in that regard. In the first point you made about the ship being able to escape with a Star Destroyer on the rise. Yeah, I agree. There's better ways to do that. You just simply send Vader in a smaller ship with the Inquisitors, and you can kind of clean up. It's small tweaks. But I guess this is where you and I go different. When there are things wrong or things that are clunky or things that could be polished, I tend to look at it this way. Simple adjustments could have made that flow narratively much stronger. Agree with you.
Right.
But the end result is the same. If the end result is positive, the small bumps, to me, I don't know why you couldn't have just tweaked this a little bit. It made it cleaner. But at the end, if the ship was different, would I feel different about the scene? No, I wouldn't. And that's, to me, when I said at the beginning, it nailed the assignment. It nailed the fun.
Mm-hmm.
If they had done a better job of showing a smaller ship, less of a fleet, a more, rogue hunting group going after him to where it would have been a more plausible escape, yes, it would have fit better as a narrative, sure. And if Reva and Kenobi would have maybe forced communicate or done something where they had a better chance at talking as opposed to a steel door, would it be tighter? Absolutely. No disagreement with you there whatsoever. But for me, if those two things change, it doesn't really up or lower the score or the enjoyment I had. Hence, kind of my opinion on the show.
But yeah, go ahead.
No, I think that's it. I'm more
right.
I mean, I'm more forgiving of those because I found the end result to be worthy.
Right.
Where it seems like you fall, whether you agree with this observation or not, is the conclusion of this confrontation is not satisfying. And not only that, but the pieces that lead me there are clunky. So I can't even say, well, I don't like where you went with it, but it was executed flawlessly.
Right.
It seems like it missed both ways for you, where you didn't enjoy where it ended and you didn't enjoy the execution, which makes it harder for you to be maybe as forgiving as I am.
Yeah, for you, it's bumps. For me, it's basically almost every single shot. Because when we get to the action here, so basically the only planet that I found to be like Star Wars was in episode 2. Please remind me what this planet is.
The Hong Kong planet? I'm totally blanking on that.
Right.
It's supposed to be like Hong Kong. They said, yeah, I can look it up. Give me a second.
Right.
Go ahead. I'll pull it up for you.
Right. So it's that planet that kind of gave us the scale of the show. It's like, okay, remember how we talked about before shows release that this is not Mandalorian. This is not the Book of Boba Fett. This is Kenobi. Dayu. Thank you. This is where all the money is going into. This needs to feel the most epic. So I was also looking at scale in the show. And beyond Dayu, everything else, once again, feels so small. The scale of the action, the scale of scenes, the amount of troopers on stage, even when they run through that door and they shoot at the refugees, right, who are not even rebels, they're not fighters.
Not yet, yeah.
Right, at point blank range, and just pew, 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 vice versa, again, from maybe 10 feet away. And I'm thinking to myself, wait, hold on a second, Deborah, Kathleen Kennedy, or whoever is responsible, where's the budget? Where did everything go? Okay, all right. Pandemic, yes, that's the...
It did fill it all in Southern California, so right. Because
this is the show that fans have been waiting since 2006. Okay, all right, pandemic or no pandemic, I think a little bit of extra detail or maybe perhaps development time might have been allocated to make it feel grand.
I feel like outside of the planet in episode 3, I felt the episode 3 planet looked like Arizona, which is fine. Like, I get it. Like,
yeah.
But I felt like this planet felt a little more terrestrial. It was I think the sky effect with the gaseous kind of look they had red. I don't know. To me, this planet didn't bother me as much, but to each their own.
Right. So its scale was another aspect of it. And when we get to the action, my younger brother, who texted me like 6 a.m. in the morning immediately when he watched the episode because he's a fitness trainer, so his schedule is off like out of whack, and he's texting me all morning long. I'm like, hold on a second, I gotta read this. My brother never responds to Star Wars like this. And he was a lot less lenient than I am, a lot less diplomatic. You can imagine the sort of language that we have between two brothers. He basically shreds it apart. And I think this time he's so on point because it is, I would have easily forgiven it if it was an ABC show. And even by ABC's standards, when I look at the first season of The Arrow, The Flash, the CW, I'm sorry, the Justice League, or which one was it with Hawk Lady?
Legends of Tomorrow?
Legends of Tomorrow. Vastly superior shows to anything Star Wars live action we've seen up to point.
No way. Get out of here.
Vastly superior. Far superior action. Far better outlined characters that you understand where they're coming from. You have failed. The city, all the struggle and transformation that, he goes through the Green Arrow versus this. Again, it's just at one
Arrow's
point,
good. I could maybe go with Arrow, right. But
at one point I have to pause and say, well, hold on a second. What am I looking at here? Am I looking at some like bizarre offshoot, exotic Netflix show that just came out, and a couple of my friends chimed in and said, hey Ben, I think you should check it out and watch it, maybe you will like it? dude, this is Star Wars we're talking about. When you mentioned Star Wars once upon a, and I hate to be this guy, I hate to be.
You are that guy, Ben.
You
are that guy.
In the old days. Hold on a second.
Hey, thanks to Blue Pig for stopping by. Good luck with your driving school. We'll see you next week.
Hold on. In my days, Star Wars used,
if you clip that scene, that's an accurate depiction of this.
Right. No, but it's once again, we're talking about a franchise, obviously, that we'll all love and adore. Let me stop goofing off now. That it's wow, it had a ring to it, right? It felt something special. Like even the Clone Wars show. Let's not go that far back. And then you look at something like this and say, like, I swear to you, Josh, just like all laughter aside, like just being serious for a moment. For the entire episode, I'm looking for things to anchor to and say, well, like, wow, this scene was really cool, well done, well thought out. Wow, like I'm so impressed with it. The rest of the episode could just burn. Give me just one scene that I could look at and say, wow, somebody really thought this through. Nothing. I felt absolutely nothing. And I don't think that I was coming at it with an expectation to bring my big Russian hammer and just completely dismantle the show. I don't do that, guys. I'm not a vitriol sort of dude. Go completely ape shit emotional and start going crazy with the episode. There was just not anything in this episode for me to anchor to. But let's get to the ending and the Vader thing.
Yeah, I can't believe that didn't work for you in any capacity. I can't. No. I can't.
I can't believe it either, to be honest with you. I was pumped.
Do you not feel a little bit, Ben, that you might just be a little jaded? A little bit? I mean, just a little bit. I can feel you, you like The Last Jedi, yes. Which had maybe one of the, all right, everyone, don't hate me here. I know I got a lot of Last Jedi fans here. The Last Jedi had maybe one of the lamest attempts at a cool final moment of anything I've ever seen with Luke's hologram. It's not cool. It's not cool. As bad as they want it to be cool, it's not cool. It would have been cool if he would have actually just went out there and died. Like, well, but his fourth, like, that was an attempt at a cool goodbye moment, right? That missed for me. I'll just do the opposite. That one totally missed for me. It was like, that doesn't look cool. I wish he would have kind of had a conversation with Kylo as his old apprentice.
My best friend was saying that it was not fulfilling because Luke needed to be here physically.
I felt that so much. I felt like it would have elevated the film because, look, the self-sacrifice is a huge part of Star Wars going back from A New Hope, where it's a passing of the torch. It's an appeal to your old Padawan. It's that parallel of Obi-Wan just giving up himself to Anakin in the hopes he will one day, that his son will carry on that mantle, that he one day be turned. It's kind of that goodbye. And I felt like for Luke to not be there presently, number one, and for second of all, I felt like his treatment of Kylo in those moments was so dismissive. No appeal to his good nature, no appeal to a return. That's where when people talk about Luke not being who they thought he would, they talk about him on the planet. Now, I don't care. Yeah. Of course he'd be jaded. I don't care about that. Just like Ben. What bothered me more than anything was that he should have put a hand out towards Kylo, and I felt like he didn't in that last moment. I felt like he was much more like, oh, you can't touch this, Kylo. I'm better than you'll ever be. I'm like, okay, like that's how it read to me. And so
can I address the two questions that you had?
Yeah, go ahead.
The first one that you say, might I be jaded, as a fan who just like going, ripping the show apart, and my love for The Last Jedi. I think I have enough confidence. And once again, guys, like this is two friends talking. We're enjoying ourselves. We're having a good time, having differences of opinion. I think I have like built enough emotional wisdom to say, like, look, just back off a little bit. Just like going too crazy here. Like, where are you coming from, Ben? Is this emotional Ben speaking, or are you just like somebody who just laid back with your Sherlock Holmes little smoking pipe? It's like, let me see what this is. I honestly, man, like, if I were, I would openly on a live stream admit it to you, like, yeah, Josh, I'm jaded a little bit. Like, it kind of sucks. It feels bad being a Star Wars fan in this period. Blah 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 blah. Let me go just cry my tears out. I don't think it's the case of that. I just honestly, my opinion is obviously biased, but I see what this show is doing, and I think my critique is valid of it. It's not dispassionate. It's obviously passionate, but I think I've picked up enough on rudimentary, basic storytelling elements to recognize them and to see a lack of thereof. Now, with the the Last Jedi, I'll be very short here, I know, because we got to move on here.
It's okay.
I love it with the knowledge that I recognize it's a deeply flawed film.
So why are you able to do that for The Last Jedi, but not for other
Bias.
Star Wars projects?
We all have bias.
There you go. That's
obviously
exactly
100%.
That's exactly right.
And I told you, because this
Yes,
is
of
why
course.
it's so easy to
I'm
say.
I'm pointing out that I had that
This
prequel
is
bias
why
that
it's
makes
so
yeah.
easy for me to disconnect and say, like, hey, Ben, you're not 20 anymore, dude. Go chill. Josh is loving it. Jimmy's loving it. Barb's Basement, he 100% loves it. I know he's loving it. We had an awesome podcast. I'd love to hear actually what he has to say. But I felt that The Last Jedi, with all its shortcomings and flaws, was a lot more thought out film than this is, in a sense, where it provided enough sandbox of imagination to take a look at that same scene that didn't work for you with Luke, and for me to take a completely different read on it, not based on what I wanted that scene to be, but what's actually in the script and in the scene. And what happens there is, first Luke does this, right? He does crazy antics. He's like, he does like a John Woo kind of like crazy move.
Yeah, he does. Mm-hmm.
But by the end of it, what does he tell him? He's like, look, let go of this, Ben. You will always be alone. He teaches him, he gives him this teachable moment, right? And he tells them, see you around, kid, kind of like a pat on the shoulder thing. Yeah. And his sacrifice that, he like goes into this oblivion, which is like a more ethereal, not impactful, not physically impactful scene, is, a lot of fans, I would say reasonably so, argue is the most Jedi thing you could do, because the Jedi in prequels who always preached peace never attained it, right? They ended up destroying themselves from ground up. And Luke's recognition, again, the only comparison in defense of The Last Jedi that I want to make, I think there were enough tools in the box there to pick from and say, oh, so this is what Rian Johnson is saying. And once again, I recognize it's a deeply flawed film. It's not excellent.
Oh, of course. No, of course.
Yeah.
Allowed. Absolutely.
I'm really excited to talk about Vader and everything here.
It's funny because I could talk about The Last Jedi the way you talked about Kenobi tonight, and it's just fascinating to me how we can, how funny it is, how different we can hit. One thing I would say as we transition over, let's just transition over to the fight, and then I'll maybe wrap up with a thought here on being jaded or being Star Wars fans or whatever. So this last moment, I'll maybe set the scene here, skipping ahead to the end, to the money shot. We have Vader's flexing. We'll just call it his flexing time, where we have a decoy ship using some sort of autopilot liftoff. And Vader, rightfully, is just like, we've seen a bunch of people do this in Star Wars. We've seen Rey do this. We've seen Starkiller do this. Yeah. We've seen even in the High Republic, I think we've seen Avar Kriss do this in the comics, I think. He grabs that ship. He's like, just get down here. What I liked about this one in particular, and again, I'm the positive one here, so if you want to see people rip it, Ben will be here in a second. I loved how confident he was situation. I love how when you've seen the other ship pulls, like Rey's, for example, obviously hers was like a little more reserved, a little more. Vader had command and presence on that screen, pulling that ship down. Like, this ship will submit to me. And I loved that presence. I love him just ripping the doors off, like ripping the walls off. He gets fooled. The ship flies away. Goodbye, ship. Vader stares like he does so many times throughout Star Wars, fuming underneath. Reva at this moment, okay, shooting my shot. He's distracted. He's so consumed with the ship. He's probably not paying any attention. I'm going to sneak up behind him. I've isolated him. I'm just going to stab him in the back and get at, this is it. I don't even care if I die, because I'm just, her arc was exactly what I thought it was going to be, which was, which I actually really like they played with this, which is like, she's basically gone through trauma, right? She doesn't like the Jedi. They didn't save her. In fact, Kenobi's message probably actively dissuaded people from coming to help her. No one was there to protect the younglings. They were massacred. Mm-hmm. And so she doesn't think the Jedi know what they're doing. So why would she still honor their code? Why would she still respect their beliefs? So she's like just this wild hot rod who has this terrible plan. I love the fact that the show at the end is like, yes, her plan was terrible. Like, we're not pretending she had a good plan. We're showing you that she had a terrible plan. And I like that because it makes the character deeply flawed. See, what would have leaned into this, bad character, if Reva's plan was genius and isolated Vader and actually took him by surprise, But Vader, and I don't care, man. I don't care if no one likes this scene but me. I liked it. Where Vader just arrogantly no sabers her. Signifying how much powerful Sith are than the Sith are so much more powerful than the Inquisitors. They are, and I love the fact that they show that, because you'll have maybe a casual fans who are like, well, what's an Inquisitor but like a Sith? It's like, no, they are not a Sith, right? Sith are far more powerful in the Force.
Right.
And he's just dismissing. You got to imagine he's probably pretty enraged at the situations that have taken place. Dismisses her. She pulls out the blade, starts her little spinny thing. He just slows it, takes it, smacks it in half, throws another half, kind of like, come on, a little bit of Vader honor there. Just absolutely handles her. The scene that I literally went, oh man, like said out loud is he throws the saber at her. She's like, oh, this is my chance. He just force pushes her, grabs the saber, grabs his saber. And I love this. I absolutely love the fact that he just walks up and just stabs her. Just doesn't say, just stabs her. And yes, we'll get into how does everyone survive stab wounds in Star Wars. We'll talk about that later. Right. I love that he went through with the action. He didn't just stop there and be like, actually, I'm going to recruit you now. He just walked up and was just like, didn't say some, just stabbed her, right? Just absolutely. And I loved everything about that moment. I thought it was so, because what a lot of people claim the show was going to do was like, oh, they're propping up Reva to be this wonderful, powerful character. They're like, no, she's just another broken character. Mm-hmm. She's another broken, like Darth Maul before her, like many others. She's not some new overpowered hero. She's absolutely just not on the same level. And Vader was literally like, hey, I used you as bait this whole time. Okay. You think I'm stupid? You think I'm an idiot? You're an idiot. Okay. You think you're the Grand Inquisitor, like mocking her basically. Grand Inquisitor comes out very snobby. I really liked his kind of snobbiness. It was right on brand with his character in Rebels. Just being like, you're a loser. Have fun dying in the dirt. I loved it. And this is, you see, like you can tell I can't help but kind of smile because I thought it was just really fun. I thought it was like, this is fun. I'm having a good time. I thought it is the coolest scene of Vader. I'm not saying the best. I thought it was cool. I thought it was really cool. Was it over the top? Absolutely. I don't care. Vader is over the top. That's his character. I just like it. I don't know.
Josh, again, I want to say that this is, to me, the most meaningful aspect of Star Wars. Like, I sincerely mean it. Like, if you are having a blast, that's enough for me. Remember, I was saying, like, hey, man, if at least it satisfies fans who grew up with prequels, who adore these characters, who lived with them, that's enough for me. I'm like, you know what? Cool. Big deal. It's like no hard feelings. Just part with it. Maybe it's like a first date and the lady's not digging. You just walk away. What can you do? To start off with Reva, I want to once again reiterate the point that what I see in the blueprint, with the thought process, is definitely there. And I think there's a lot to be said that they were going, for me personally, in the right direction with giving us a mix of something that is you would anticipate from this kind of show, with a couple of surprises in the middle where you say, wow, all right, I didn't expect this. Nobody expected Leia to be kidnapped. I thought it was a good thing.
Yeah,
it worked for the story.
I did too.
With Reva, the actual content of the character, of the story, what they were trying to tell was interesting. I agree with you. Like, oh, all right. So she's actually not a Sith Lord or Inquisitor. She's an infiltrator. Get it? Okay. But once again, the problem that I have here is with the execution. I saw it from a mile away. I knew it right away. Like, all right, she's not an Inquisitor. Something is going on there. She's too much in denial there. And there's too much of
arguably, real quick, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I was going to make a point I was thinking about as I was going.
Right.
Arguably, she was an Inquisitor, but she was very interested in herself. Exactly. She was, and what I liked about it is, and I'll let you go back. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought of a point. What I liked about it was they didn't try to give her some moral purpose. They weren't like, she has a moral obligation to end Vader. She's like, I don't care about any of you. I just cut some random innocent person's hand off a couple episodes ago. I'm not a good guy. It's self-interested, right? I want to kill Vader. She leaned too much to the dark side. And where did it lead her to failure? She was too focused on revenge. That's what I liked about the arc. Sorry, go ahead. I just wanted to make
no, it's fine. I understand where you're going.
Right. Yes, of course.
Your observation of what was there, like the content is good. For me, it's the issue of too much tell and not enough show. Okay. Essentially meaning that what we see happening with the character, she doesn't live through this episode. We're told what happens with her. We're told what she's feeling. We're told what her motivations are. For me, once again, I'm coming from a background of knowing my prequels inside and out. I've watched these movies gazillion times. I know who these characters are. But I personally have an opinion that when you're telling a show, whether it's familiar characters or not, you need to establish these emotional beats where it clearly reads and registers what this character is experiencing through the story. It's not effective to tell us, like, by the way, this, and this happened, and then, go off with this character. That's where she ends up. Doesn't work for me. I had zero emotional attachment to her. And now, and the same, by the way, happens to Tala, because she was basically a mandatory sacrifice. There's zero stakes in the show. She basically might as well have rocked a red shirt like in Star Trek, because he needed to throw somebody under the bus, and it's obviously a character coming. You knew from a mile away who is the only other emotionally resonant character.
So call me easy going on Star Wars, but I kind of felt the opposite. I felt like for sure they'd keep her alive.
Really?
Because in The Mandalorian, they've hardly ever killed off a side character, a nice side character. If they're a nice character in The Mandalorian, they almost always survive. So I was kind of surprised. And the droid, like Nebby was cute, man. I like that dude. They just killed him. But anyway, go ahead though. Go ahead.
Yeah. So she was basically a Star Trek officer who just like pew pew, you're gone. And now we get to the Vader. Now this is the part where I want to separate my opinion from what's on screen. I thought it was actually pretty effective. Everything that Vader does on screen, it's Force Unleashed. It's what, like you said, it's sometimes you got to give fans that little reward at the end. That's what people want to see. I believe, I didn't watch Star Wars Theory's full review, but I think he was raving about it. He's in love with it. He gave like an episode 10 out of it, something like that. That's a good positive thing. I just personally don't prefer OP Vader or any OP Jedi. It never worked for me. I always enjoyed, the Jedi from the original trilogy. Like,
that's definitely an era difference. I totally agree there.
Yeah, like that's I sense the Force and stuff like this. But
you talk about it a lot too, that the lightsaber duels in A New Hope, there was such a tacticalness to it, such a stake that if one blade touched you, you were dead. And so, I disagree that I love the all-out prequel ridiculous choreography. So definitely an era swap. Agree with you. 100%.
And the episode on Phantom Menace, that's a phenomenal, one of the greatest duels ever made. But with Vader, like, I understand what they're doing. They're showing you a full, Vader Unleashed. Like, okay, Ben, like, this is jaded Ben. I'm like, it's just, I don't like that kind of stuff. Oh, shoo, but it's fine. It works. It's very effectively done. James Earl Jones' voice is on point, man. Like, this is, Vader never sounded as good as he does in the show since.
I kind of agree. And they say they're doing like AI work. I'm like, well, they're working it. It works well.
It works better.
Amazing. It's better than what they did with Luke's voice in Mando. Yeah. It's much more effective.
So again, it's mixed feelings here. So okay, this overpowered Vader. I get it. But once again, we know who Vader is at this point. He is this killing machine. He's cold and calculating, and he's all about efficiency, and he's minimal in words. I think you and I had this discussion of unmasking Darth Vader, right? Did we speak about this? Or am I
Maybe we did. Maybe we did. Whatever the case may be.
Yeah, when we spoke about prequels earlier, we talked about.
Oh, yes, we did. We did. Yes, you're right. Yep, we did. Mm-hmm. Yes, we did. Mm-hmm.
So, and to me, he works as this economical killing machine that's unpredictable and just chop you. When he starts doing the John Woo kung fu dodging and weaving, it's goofy. It's cartoon like. It's an amazing content that belongs in I love you, John. Man, I love you. Stay with me. Persevere. It's a beautiful content that belongs in video game context, because I feel when you're when you're playing a video game, right, you are telling the story through gameplay, and you get a beautiful cutscene, and then you move on with the story. With the film, everything needs to work in service of the story, including action. And the example I want to bring is Dune. When you see that knife fight towards the end of the film, it's not there as an exposition of cool factor. It's a bloody, awesomely done action sequence. It's pretty low key, but it works in service of the story. You know who these characters are. You know what they're fighting for. You know what's at stake, man. Right? In here, it's an explosion of eye candy. It's an explosion of things that are beautiful. But to me, I did not register Vader. I registered a cool video game moment. And then, of course, the stab. And now we can talk about whether Reva survives or not.
Yeah, she definitely does.
You think?
Absolutely. And let me explain why. If you're not a good guy and you get stabbed in Star Wars, you live. It's a rule. It's 100% a rule. Let's go through the list, folks. We've got the Grand Inquisitor, he lives. We've got Reva, she lives. If you're Darth Maul, let me tell you this. If you're a good guy, if you're Darth Maul, you can get cut in half and you live. If you're a good guy, if you're Qui-Gon Jinn, one stab wound, you're out. All right? You're out. Now, my in-head, in-canon explanation is, look, there is a certain light. There is a certain rightness, a respect for life that respects death. And when you die, there is nothing about the light side of the Force that would indicate you need to live unnaturally or do these things. And you almost accept death in a much more honorable way. And you see this throughout Star Wars. In the very beginning of Star Wars, Obi-Wan accepts death in a completely different manner than we see the enemy. He accepts that. He knows its benefit. He knows its circle. He knows its conclusion. He accepts it. I've seen that the Jedi get it. And the dark side, who believes in nothing but power and nothing but obtaining that in this kind of current aggressive state, in very temporal right now perspective, use their power to unnaturally extend their life. That's what they say Darth Maul did. Darth Maul's like, I hated him so much, my body was able to live off of it and feed off the dark side of the Force. Vader was able to live because of the dark side of the Force.
Revan does it as well in the
Exactly. It's why dark side users are so. In the Revan book, based on the Old Republic MMO, you have at the end, what does the dark side, Darth Scourge get? Yeah. He gets immortality. And what does it cost him? A permanent state of pain, searing all the time. That's his reward. Their life. So I make the joke, but I think there is kind of an explanation given in Star Wars that if you lean to the dark side, if you feed off that hatred, you can find a way to survive, because they've shown it in canon and in non-canon that Force, the light side, is so much easier to kill than the dark side. So anyway, that's my little joke. So that's why I think she survived, because she's not a good guy. She's a good guy, she's dead. She's a bad guy.
So you think there is no redeeming quality about her? There is no reaching out to the surviving Jedi or to Kenobi and kind of like still wing it and survive and be a good guy?
So I looked at it this way, and I think, I don't know, maybe it's just headcanon. People are like, you're an idiot. But I think what they're going to do is, I think Reva is, I hope they go this way, because I think it'd be the bold choice. I think she's a broken individual. I think she's going to go after Ben by trying to attack Luke, because I think she's completely devastated that her whole kind of goal she sustained herself with, this whole vision, this foolish dream based on childhood trauma, this abuse she went through to get there, was thwarted. I don't think she'll turn towards the light. I think she'll just double down and say, okay, well, if I couldn't get my revenge here, I'm going to get that Kenobi. It's his fault Anakin turned out the way he did. It's his fault the Jedi didn't come. He sent that message telling him to not go to the temple. They left me there to die. I was raised by these Inquisitors who treated me like crap. And so I'm going to make him pay, because I can't take out Vader. I just got manhandled. But I've seen this Kenobi guy in the last couple episodes. He is not scaring me. And I'm just completely blinded by that hatred and the dark side. I think she's going to lean that way. Could be wrong.
All right. So there's no way out for her.
I think that would be the bolder choice as well. Because you would take an actress who is likable and new, and you'd make her character actually double down and go down the path of evil, not turn back towards the light. And so I want them to do that. And I want Obi-Wan, I think Blue Milk Mama called out earlier, I want almost Obi-Wan to fight the moral dilemma of maybe having to kill her, maybe having to end her because of this vengeful kind of tirade she's going to go on trying to disrupt these children, Leia or Luke. She's going to keep trying to pursue them in any way that she can. And I think that maybe that would be kind of an interesting take, instead of that she just turns good and helps them fight Vader.
Right.
Which is what they might do. They might do that. If they do that, I gotta say one thing. It better be a pretty cool fight scene like Duel of the Fates. They do 2v1 and it's cool. All right, I'm in. But one of them needs to die. I don't want Reva to make it off without damage. I don't want her to just be able to survive. And at the end of the episode, she's like, actually, I'm a good guy. I'm going to help the rebellion. I just think that'd be a little too nice, a little too clean. I would like it if that Reva character had to go through to be a truly kind of sad story, a truly tragic story. Someone who went through childhood trauma, who went down the wrong path and trying to find closure. And it led to her end, kind of like Maul. Darth Maul's story is very similar to that, where he was taken from a young age and abused and twisted.
Yeah, his story was amazing.
Exactly. So I hope they go that way. I don't think they will. But anyway, I want them to cut her in half and her have to get a lower half for season 2.
No, this time it's going to be the upper half.
But I think for me, I think there's potential in what they do at the end of her character. I am actually more hopeful at the end of this episode for what cool things they could do with the finale than I was before. But again, I had a totally different feeling on the episode than you did. So
yeah.
All right, sorry, I went pretty wild there, guys. I apologize. I was pretty hyped up on Star Wars there for a second. What do you think? Do you think she made it, Ben?
I'll make it super short, and then if you want, we'll spend 5 minutes maybe surmising how the show will end.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up.
Once again, when I watch from episode to episode, I don't like to jump ahead. I don't like to predict or tie loose ends or look into the screen and say, where they're potentially leading me. It's just like I read my books chapter by chapter, like take me on the right. For me, it's always the journey. It's not the ending. That's why, I was asked on my YouTube, like, hey, Ben, do you think the final episode, I think Blue McMama also asked me, do you think that your final episode will improve things for you? I'm like, no, I'm there for the journey. You need to experience and feel it. It's not about the grand conclusion. So many video games end on a dull note, and I still enjoy them because the 60 or so plus hours of it that I was playing it, I enjoyed. Same with the show. I spent the most amount of time enjoying it. The ending is not going to ruin it for me. But I think with Reva, I think you're right. Deborah Chow is the kind of director who recognizes that you need to upset the formula just a little bit.
I hope so.
Again, right. We don't understand how much politicking is going on there, how much of the director's true skill emerges through the end product, and how much of it is held back by corporate decisions.
Yeah, it's true.
Once again, if I criticize Deborah Chow's work, it's not like I think she's a horrible being who should never touch Star Wars again. Like, guys, this is not the kind of content we create here. This is not the kind of Star Wars fans that we are. Just like, hey, big deal. It didn't work for us. The little bit of jadedness, like the frustration that I have is I feel that Star Wars is going through this transformation point where it needs to stand on its own feet and not rely on George Lucas or familiar tropes anymore and reinnovate itself. And when remember I was telling you and I and Jimmy, we were discussing this, hey man, maybe this will be it. Maybe this will be the show where we'll look...
You know what he's talking about? What they did to the character.
That's the line of the evening.
Yes, that is great. For those who don't know,
I thought that this would be the show that is like, maybe this is it because it's such a central character to the franchise. But I guess it's not. Maybe there's still a lot more kinks to get out of the way before Star Wars can grow above competition and maybe not just be this good fun entertainment, be like, oh my god, this is like Dune level of good. This is really special. Big deal, guys. Big deal.
I think as far, and I actually have to run here in a second, so what we're gonna wrap it here in these last 2 or 3 minutes closure. I think we've had a long conversation today, about an hour and a half, where did the Warriors win? If so, I am sad because I am not a Warriors fan. I'm sorry, Scott. Not a big fan myself. Okay, they're up 22 points. I'd say that's not looking great there. Okay, sorry for the little derail there. As we're coming to the end here, you've heard Ben, I think, express a lot of his frustrations, a lot of maybe his disappointment. On the flip side, you've probably heard me express my excitement and kind of my hype for it. At the end of the day, I think we have to recognize how certain things work for others and not for Ben, for example, for me and not for Ben. And it can be challenging for us because when I like something and I hear someone criticize it, like Ben, maybe your default reaction is to kind of defend your position. You're like, well, wait, it's like when you say that, I totally see this. And if you guys were around earlier in the episode, you might have heard us go back and forth in The Last Jedi, where I had a totally different interpretation of the scene than Ben did. And it can be challenging for us to say, okay, like I got to defend myself here. I got to stand up for the show's honor. Like I like this. And we have a default feeling that when I say an opinion, when I say Kenobi's good, I want to defend that opinion. I don't just want to say, well, it's good. I'm wrong, but it's good. I want to say, wait a second. I have reasons for that. So I'd love at some point to continue this conversation with Ben where we talk about, these kind of difference in opinions. Because I think it's fascinating how many different Star Wars fans are out there. And I think you've kind of seen it on display tonight as this really became almost a less of an episode review and more of a conversation on, different types of fan feelings and emotions. When
we are as fans.
Yeah. Very interesting. And yes, I see call out a Discord. We've been talking about that behind the scenes. We need to get some sort of group Discord server up. Agreed. More to come this year. We will make that a priority. It's been a busy start to the year, but hopefully we have a little bit of a lull here over the summer before Andor. So I have to run here in just a second, but Ben, going into the finale, you are not expecting any sort of change of opinion. We're not going to think Ben's going to be happy next week, but maybe.
I don't know. Maybe
we will be.
Right? Yeah.
So you'll want to tune in.
We'll have something things will connect. And again, I'm not hopeful. I'm not distraught over it. I'm like, okay, let's see what the next episode is. Maybe there'll be just one time off thing that I will enjoy. Guys, I got to say this. Star Wars is better off with Kenobi show than it is without, right? We should be happy. We should celebrate the fact that we got to hear and fans are like rallying behind it and fans are enjoying it, right? We don't have to be always like feeling that we're stepping on eggshells to express our opinions honestly, but I trust Josh enough and I consider Josh enough of a friend to say that, look, we can look at the same thing and be intelligent people who understand our cinema, who are passionate about our cinema, but just have entirely different reads of things. This is what fandom is all about. It's like, gee, I didn't think of it. What is this? I had an amazing podcast. Sorry, guys, for shameless plug here with Barb's Basement. We talked about what the fandom is, how social media has transformed us, how we communicate with each other, how we treat one another. Guys, who would have thought ever we would get another Kenobi show? It's here. Just have fun, have a good time with it. And if you're like myself, dude, just go read a book or something. Have a good time with it.
And we have, for people like Ben, The Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi coming out later this year. Animated Star Wars always seems to impress Ben and me as well. So thank you guys for being here. It's a lot of fun. I know it can be long and sometimes uncomfortable to disagree, but we have a good time. And we hope you're here next week for the finale, where I'm sure we'll have a very long conversation. So make sure you check out Ben's channel, check out his review, check out everyone. Buckle up, one more week to go. Are we going to get a season 2? We'll find out next weekend. Okay, 100%. Ben is team season 2. We shall see. Thank you guys for being here. We appreciate your support. It's a lot of fun as always interacting with you guys. Appreciate all the conversation. We'll see you again.
Thanks a lot, guys. It's good to see all of you. Thanks for stopping by.